welcome to another Wednesday Yachting Luncheon. This is our bifurcated luncheon where we have eaten today upstairs because of the coronavirus and joined each other downstairs. Upstairs because that's waitered service and it's not as healthy apparently, or it's not as safe to eat from a buffet. But we get the same beautiful view regardless of the venue you are viewing from here in the St. Francis Yacht Club. Look out those windows. I mean, where on earth can we have lunch with such a beautiful backdrop? Let's see a little bit about future speakers. You can come by in May on the 27th and listen to Paul Kayard speak about being the first sailor inducted into the Sports Hall of Fame. So we're proud of Paul, and it's great that he's got that honor. Otherwise, in May, you can come by and listen to Steve Tashia. He's the chairman of the America's Cup Hall of Fame, and he'll talk about their process and all that. And come by earlier in May, Jack Griffin will be here. He's the editor of Cup Experience. That's a very authoritative, basically daily source of news on the America's Cup. Baykeeper will be here in April. Moss Landing Research Brian Ackerman will be here in April. And we'll also listen to Kevin Kelly. He's a new modern boat bottom cleaner. He actually provides you with a video of your boat all the time. So after your boat is cleaned, you can look at the video and look exactly at what the bottom looked like just before and just after as he was cleaning it, and look at anything else that's going on underneath the boat. In the end of March on the 25th, Jim Hancock, the founder of the Sailing Science Center. Don't those words make sense to you? Sailing Science Center. He'll be here to talk all about the Sailing Science Center. And next week, Chuck Adams, who was a former co-owner of the Pittsburgh Penguins, the hockey team, and also a former father of the Family Club. Who knows the connection between the Family Club and the St. Francis Yacht Club? It's very significant. Denny Jordan was once an important member of the Family Club, and he brought the entire theatric component of and from the Family Club to St. Francis Yacht Club. So our performances, our whole notion of having a retreat, just like the Family Club has and like the Bohemian Club has, those came from and have roots in Denny Jordan's connection to the Family Club and membership in the Family Club. Now a little bit about our speaker today. How many people here have sailed around the world? Darn. Well, there are other things you can do before you first set out to sail around the world. In the case of our speaker today, at age 5, he was banging around with his dad on a 40-foot boat in England. By age 11, he was out there playing in dinghies, and by age 18, he was racing in a 40-foot boat, a wooden boat that would have some racing fame. And then he took, like many people do, a hiatus in his sailing career while he got established in business. So he went away from sailing for a while, and then came back in 2010 and started racing in a 420. And that's a cool dinghy, a thoughtful dinghy around the world, really. And then started racing more and more and more in lasers. And by 2015, found himself reading an article about Robin Knox-Johnston, whose claim to fame is that he was the first solo, nonstop circumnavigator. Those of us who remember the Gypsy Moth in Chichester will recall that he did stop once on his way around. But Sir Robin did one full lap nonstop by himself. That is a heck of a claim to fame. Sir Robin went on then to create the business that you're going to learn about today, the recreational and business activity of the Clipper Around the World race. So our speaker then sailed in a leg in 2017, and he'll talk all about what I mean by one of the 8 legs. Then he sailed another leg in 2017, and then in 18, and then he became one of the paid crew. There's 2 paid crew nowadays who sail on these legs. So it's a fascinating way you can convert your kind of Walter Mitty excitement about watching other people race around the world into the personal experience of doing it yourself. So we're very pleased to listen to Will. The race is going on right now, so he'll be able to give us an update on the race as well. So please, welcome Clipper Races Will Stokely. Will.
Well, thank you very much indeed for welcoming me to your fantastic yacht club. I don't think many presenters get a view quite like that out of the window. So my name is Will Stokely. I was a crew member on the Visit Seattle yacht in the 2017-18 round the world race. I originally only signed up to sail the first leg from the UK down to Uruguay. It was fantastic, I loved it, but I was after a challenge, and I realised when I got to Uruguay that I hadn't quite been tested in the way that I sort of set out to be. So whilst I was in Uruguay, I signed up to do leg 6, which is the race from China across the North Pacific to Seattle, which ticks all those extra boxes of that sort of stretch and pushing me out of my comfort zone that I was after. And then after the race, a job opportunity came up within the Clipper organisation, and I joined as the recruitment manager. So going around looking for budding sailors who want to be a part of the next race. So what I'm going to talk about today, I'll give you a bit of a history of the race. We'll talk about the concept of how the race works, talk about some of the challenges of racing. I'll briefly go through the selection and training process. I'll show you some fantastic videos of some of the racing, and I'll talk a little bit about the lasting impact, and then we'll open up for some questions afterwards. So the race was founded by Robin Knox-Johnston. He was the first man to circumnavigate non-stop. He completed that just over 50 years ago, and ever since then he's been looking for a way to take the magic of ocean racing to a wider audience of people. So rather than me talking about it, we've got a nice film that does a good job of explaining that, so I'm just going to run that for you.
Any second now. The cannon has gone. Day 312, about 25 past 3 on April the 22nd.
It's almost 50 years since Sir Robin Knox-Johnston completed his pioneering non-stop solo circumnavigation of the planet in the Sunday Times Golden Globe race.
And Robin Knox-Johnston and Sue Haley have sailed non-stop around the world.
The media compared it with the first landing on the moon a few months after his return. There are still fewer people who have sailed solo around the world today than have orbited it in space. 25 years later, during a climbing expedition with British mountaineer Sir Chris Bonington, the initial concept of the Clipper race was born. As the pair discussed how much it cost to climb Mount Everest and how many people took on the challenge. The sailing equivalent for Sir Robin was clear: crossing the world's toughest oceans in a circumnavigation of the planet. But not for an elite few. These would be everyday people with a sense of adventure.
I wanted to share it. I wanted everyone to have the opportunity to have that same experience.
And so, in October 1996, in the spirit of the competing tea clippers a century earlier, the first race set off from Plymouth to catch the trade winds.
They will be sailing on new, state-of-the-art 68-foot yachts, the fastest and most advanced of their kind.
Thousands have followed as the fleet and route have grown over the years. The Clipper Round the World Yacht Race is now unique. It's the greatest ocean adventure on the planet. 20 years from now, you'll be more disappointed by the things you didn't do than by the ones you did.
By doing something really difficult, you have a sense of achievement, something to be proud of for the rest of your life. You've got to go out there and experience it to achieve it.
So, Robin Knox-Johnston clearly wired differently to the average human being. Quite astonishing what he did then. And then, he wanted, he could see things like the Whitbread race and knew how many people looked at that and said, God, if only I could do that, but I'm not a professional, so I can't. And so he has created this method that now absolutely anyone, within reason, can have a go at sailing around part or all of the world. So we are now currently running the 12th edition of the race, so we've got 24 years of experience of running the race and all the knowledge and experience that comes from that. The current race is made up of about 700 racing crew. I'll explain a little bit later how that works out. It is the only amateur global yacht race. We are attracting people from all around the world. This is the first race where less than 50% of the crew come from the UK. North America is a decent chunk of the crew. We get quite a lot of people coming from Australia and New Zealand, and then a decent number from Europe, and then a scattering from the rest of the world. But yeah, 44 nations represented in this race. And if you sign up as a circumnavigator, then you're going to have 40,000 fantastic miles in your logbook by the end of it. So let's have a look at the route. Whereas the Vendée and the Whitbread race head down and round Antarctica, that doesn't make for a great race in terms of being able to make stopovers. So we break the race up into 8 legs. So the race starts in the UK. This race started in London, but the actual ports that we go into in each destination vary from race to race. Set off and head down the Atlantic. We actually stopped off in Portimao in Portugal after 7 days and had a quick stop over there, and then headed down the Atlantic. So that's trade wind sailing. You cross the equator, you go through the doldrums, getting you into South America. From South America, the shortest leg of the race, leg 2, is across the South Atlantic, a hard and fast bash through the South Atlantic winds into South Africa. This race we went into Cape Town. Leg 3 is then one of the big legs, taking in the Southern Ocean. Depending on the weather systems, most yachts head down below the 40th parallel and get some freezing cold, big seas, big winds, and some really exhilarating sailing, taking us into West Australia. From West Australia, we then head south again, back into the Southern Ocean, around the south of Tasmania, and then racing up the east coast to, in this race, Airlie Beach. Then leg 5, I'll tell you what we should have done, and then I'll talk about what we did do. So leg 5, racing from Airlie Beach to Sanya in China, and then from Sanya, 2 short races of about 3 or 4 days each. Sanya to Subic Bay in the Philippines, and then the Philippines back to Zhuhai, and then change over there for the start of leg 6, which we sail from Zhuhai to Qingdao, before then crossing the North Pacific. That's where they are at the moment. But obviously we haven't been able to go into China, so there's been a certain amount of rerouting, and we've been basing ourselves in the Philippines, which at the moment, fortunately, has been as free as anywhere of the coronavirus. So we've made our base there for the last month and have been doing a bit of racing in and out of the Philippines. They're doing a triangular course at the moment to come back to the Philippines towards the end of the week, and they will then head off across the North Pacific from there. So taking in the North Pacific, so as well as leg 3, this is another one of the big ones. You know it's going to be freezing cold, you're going to have huge waves and some big winds, so it's another one not for the light-hearted. Taking us into the west coast of the USA, we have been to San Francisco a few times in the past. At the moment it's Seattle. Who knows where it'll be in the next edition of the race. Leg 7 then takes us down the coast of the west coast of the USA. We stop racing to transit the canal, meet up on the other side, and then race back up through the Caribbean. Taking us to the east coast this year, taking us into New York. And then there's the homecoming leg where we're doing a short race from New York to Bermuda, and then from Bermuda into Derry in Northern Ireland, before we then go around the top of Scotland back into London to finish the race. As I say, those ports I mentioned are this edition of the race, and each race we chop and change some of those and visit different places. Let's talk a little bit about the yachts. So these are the Clipper 70s we're racing with now. They're the 3rd edition of the yachts. We started with 60-foot yachts. We then upgraded to 68-foot yachts, and we're now on the 70. You can see there, they're fabulous racing machines. These are not in any way lightweight yachts. They are well built to be able to take in the oceans that we go to, bearing in mind as well that we have amateur crew on board. They, not much on deck, not much to stop those waves as they sweep down the deck. 2 pedestal grinders, twin helms, really very exciting boats to sail. Even though they're heavyweight compared to the Volvo Ocean Race boats, these boats will happily do 30 to 35 knots in a big sea with some good wind. So very, very exciting boats to sail. So just to give you a little bit of a taster, and I thought I'd share with you the first race of this edition, from London to Portimao, 7 days at sea. And actually in that race they had just about every condition they could expect. They were expecting a nice easy warm-up. No such luck. They had a pretty lively Bay of Biscay and had some pretty good conditions. So here's some fun sailing in the Clipper 70s.
3, 2, 1.
not pictures of the middle of the big oceans. That was just the Bay of Biscay, so some pretty lively conditions for them. So who is it we put on these yachts then? We're giving them stripped-down racing yachts, and we're sending them out into the same oceans as the Vendée Globe and the Volvo. So who are they? Well, the answer is we've got a split of about 70% male to 30% women. Wide range of professions involved. As I say, 44 nationalities involved. The youngest racer we had was 18, and we have racers in their 70s. So for us, age is not per se a reason for people doing the race or not. What we need to know is that those individuals have the fitness and agility to be able to do it. So there are plenty of 70-year-olds who are fitter and stronger than plenty of 40 or 50-year-olds. So that's part of the assessment that we make, and your first week of training to a certain extent is a bit of an evaluation of you and whether you're going to be able to cope with life on board. Perhaps the most amazing statistic for this race is that around 40% of the people who take on the race have never sailed or have got no significant sailing experience before they come and do their 4 weeks of training. So we have people who will sign up to this race, will take the plunge, who have potentially not been on a yacht before, and we will then turn them into safe and competent ocean racers in time for them to start their race. So, really phenomenal thing that some people take on. It's a big thing for somebody to say sign up to 1 or 2 legs, but we have plenty of people who sign up to do 11 months sailing around the world having never been on a yacht before. So in terms of the makeup on the yachts will normally sail with between 18 to 20 crew. They have a professional skipper and a professional mate. Those 18 to 20 crew, at the beginning of this race, 8 or 9 on every boat had signed up to do the full circumnavigation. So you've got a core of people who are going to do the full circumnavigation, and the rest of the crew are made up of what we call leggers. So they might have signed up to do 1 leg, they might have originally signed up like myself to do 1 leg and then add another leg, and some people might be doing 4 or 5 legs. So each team across the 8 legs will have between 55 and 60 people, and that makes up our sort of crew population of 700 people for the whole race. So a good example, this is me setting off in Liverpool, ready to take on the race down to Uruguay. Economists next to a student, nurses, nannies, geophysicists, landscape designers, and that down at the front is my skipper, Nikki Henderson. So I was lucky enough to sail with Nikki. She turned 24 just before the race started. Phenomenal achievement for anyone to do this race, but to skipper a yacht all the way around the world with a team of amateur crew as a 24-year-old and come second overall was really quite remarkable. And of course the winner of the race was Wendy Tuck, so the 2 female skippers came out on top, which what an achievement. So we talk about 40% of people have not sailed before, and let's face it, those people who have sailed dinghies or 30-foot yachts inshore around the Cans. We're going to be sending them out into the ocean. So the training is a very, very serious part of it, and it is a significant part of the race. Yes, it's training you to get ready for the race. Actually, it's really good fun as well. So, it's all part of the experience. And typically people will spread training. We're signing up people now for the race that's going to start in August 2021. And people are doing their training. They're coming and doing maybe their first 2 weeks of training this year and then their next 2 weeks of training next year. So it really turns this, what might be a 4 or 5 week sailing adventure into a sort of a 1.5 year adventure as that excitement builds. Massive focus for obvious reasons is safety. So we do a lot in the first 2 weeks, and it's really simple deck skills. So when you arrive for your training, you will have your safety brief, and you'll spend the first half a day just learning about winches and grinders and how that all works. And then you go out sailing on lunchtime on day 1. So we get people straight into it. We do day sailing. We go out, we hoist sails, we put reefs in, we shake reefs out. And there's just a lot of repetition. These boats, even for experienced sailors like myself, I came along to level 1, maybe a touch arrogantly thinking I wasn't going to learn much, but actually, I rapidly realised that my experience on a 35, 40-foot yacht was nothing compared to sailing on these things. So, and you do man overboard drills before you even leave the dock. So there's about 6 foot of freeboard on these boats. So obviously man overboard is a lot different to what it's like on a 30-footer. And every day you go out during your 26 days of training, you will do a man overboard drill. So that becomes, to start with, it's complete chaos and you don't really know what's going on. And by the end of it, it's muscle memory. So, to start with, you'll have a briefing from your skipper and you'll talk about your man overboard and you're going to do that job and you're going to do that job and you're going to do that. And then he says, I'm going to put the dummy in the water now, and it's all very carefully managed. Of course, by the end of level 2 and level 3, then the skipper's going to make sure you're all on the foredeck halfway through a sail change, and he'll nudge the dummy over the back of the boat and let you react and manage it yourself. So it's great to see how that does become just a process that becomes so straightforward for the crews through the training. Level 2 is very similar to level 1 in terms of lots of deck skills. The difference with this one is rather than day sailing, actually you get on the boat and you go out sailing for 3 or 4 days. The skipper will take you offshore. So for a lot of people, this is the first experience they get of being at a watch system, learning what else it takes to sail a boat. So as well as the on-watch, managing the decks, it's also, doing the cleaning, doing the cooking, writing the log, emptying the bilges. So all of those things that just help a boat tick over at sea. Level 3 is then into sort of performance sailing. So we're now not hoisting sails for the sake of it. We're actually learning to trim. We're trimming to the helm. We're helming to the trim and learning about this great wide traveller and how we use that to power and depower the mainsail. So really starting to get people used to that. And then we start using spinnakers as well. So these boats are designed for downwind sailing. That's where they're the most fun. That's where we get the big speeds from. So, learning the spinnakers and taking the spinnakers down as much as anything safely is very, very important. Levels 1, 2 and 3, you will sign up to the training. We've just started training this year, and we will be running training all the way through to November. So huge amounts of training opportunity. You will sign up to a week of training and you will do a week of training with whoever else signs up for that week. By the time we get to level 4, you know which team you're in and you know who your skipper is. So you do level 4 on your yacht with your skipper and some of your crew. So this is your opportunity for your skipper to train you in what he or she thinks is going to be the sort of the race-winning manoeuvre or the race-winning tactic. And then towards the end of level 4 is when we do a short race. So we set up a race course from the Isle of Wight, normally across the Channel and back again, 36 hours of racing. So, we've been on the boats training, we've been looking at the other boats, we've been looking on the AIS screen, looking at each other, and then all of a sudden during the race, penny starts to drop for people. Yeah, this is a competition, this is a race. Why are they going a bit faster than us? Let's check the AIS, let's see where they're doing, what bearing are they making? So, all of a sudden it starts to become real during this last week of training. Level 4 will be taking place about sort of 3 or 4 weeks before the race starts, so the levels of excitement now are really building up. So I talked there about being put into teams. During each of your weeks of training, you will be rated by your training skipper. You'll have a little bit of a report written at the end of each week and you'll be rated on certain behaviours and activities both above deck and below deck. And so the Clipper team then take all of that information and we do our best to create 11 identical teams. So we have 11 matched yachts, they're all identical, and we try and create 11 matched teams. Now, bearing in mind we then have a pretty odd jigsaw puzzle. We've got 8 or 9 round-the-worlders, then we've got some people who are doing one leg, some people are doing multiple legs, and those multiple legs might be 1, 2, 3, or it could be 1, 4, 7. So that's quite an odd-shaped jigsaw puzzle to work with, but we do our best to try and create these match teams. And then in May of race year, we invite as many of the crew who can come to join us in Portsmouth, and we have our crew allocation day. So that's where the skippers get up on stage and they're presented with an envelope. The skippers have no influence in who's in their team. They're given an envelope and they read out the names of their team, and then they take their teams off to a room in the afternoon, and that's when Clipper, as an organisation, takes a big step back. It's down to the skippers, as long as they work within the training SOPs that we've given them. Actually, how they run their boat is down to them. If they want to operate with 2 watches, they can. If they want to operate with 3 watches, they can. So it's down to them to shape their yacht and their team in the way they think is going to be most advantageous. And so that afternoon in Portsmouth, they can chat to their team members who are present and start to talk to them about, how competitive do we want to be? How do we want to manage certain things? Who are the people in our teams who are going to pick up some particular roles? And, as a team, what does success look like? For some people, success is about doing as well as we can and competing. For an awful lot of people, success is getting to the start line. This is such a massive adventure for people that actually, it's not all about the winning. It's about taking part in this magnificent adventure and being a valuable member of the team and helping your team achieve whatever's important to them. And what's important to some teams is about having a great time and getting to the end with a smile on your face and feeling that you've achieved it in the way that you wanted to at the start. So from the videos, I think we can see the physical challenges are fairly clear to see. Those big heeled decks, getting around the decks is challenging. These sails are all heavy. Some of the sails are 300 or 400 pounds when they're dry. There's nothing you do on this boat that's easy or light. So there's very few things you do on your own. So the training is an awful lot about the teamwork, that when the skipper calls for a sail change, some people will disappear down below to get the sails ready, some people will disappear along the foredeck to start unhanking the Yankee that's coming down. So, there's a lot of teamwork going on, and life on deck is challenging. Life down below, you get lulled into a false sense of security that I'm down below, so it's easy now. But actually, the boat's still at 40 degrees. You're still pitching in the waves, and actually, life is pretty hard. At 40 degrees, it's fine when you go out sailing, and you think, yeah, that was a hard day. But actually, when you're at 40 degrees for a week or two at a time, it just gets exhausting. So, big thing for our crew is to make sure they're aware of just how physical it's going to be, and that they get themselves into as good physical shape as they can before the race. People skills is obviously a really important thing, and that's what we look for when we interview people. Is we're not just looking for, we're definitely not looking for supreme sailors. That's not the important bit. What we're looking for is people that we can drop into a team of 18 to 20 people, and we know they're going to do a great job and mix in and make the team better as a result of them being there. So people skills is really important, but actually it's not just people skills when they come along on day one. It's when you've been at sea for 3 weeks. You're a bit short on sleep, you've been eating the same food for a long time, you're cold, wet, how are your people skills then? So, again, that's something we do quite a lot of warning people about, that, just because it's fun and enjoyable on day one, you might have a slightly different mindset by the time you've got to the other side of the ocean you're crossing. So, another video to show you to round up. This is the second race of leg one, so from Portimao down to Portugal, down to South America. Supposedly trade wind sailing, shorts and t-shirt stuff. Again, they had some phenomenal conditions, and they had some big squalls that hit them off Uruguay. Few yachts suffered, and there's some good footage at the end of this one of one of the yachts that didn't quite get their spinnaker down fast enough. So you see a very nice big Code 1 spinnaker being turned into ribbons. So this is a nice one. It also includes some of the equator crossing ceremony as well. So just last couple of bits. So the legacy of doing the race. Robin set this race up to enable ordinary people to go out and do these extraordinary things. And it is the most fantastic sailing adventure you're going to have. As an individual, you will be pushed to the limit, physically, mentally, emotionally. For me, I think one of the most important things about the Clipper race is what it does for individuals. You go out on this race to push yourself to the limit, and I think in the process of doing so, come back as a very different person. You have a new respect of who you are and what you can achieve and what your limits are. And actually the bit that I think is really ever more important is having been on a yacht in the middle of the ocean and realised just how small we are. I think everyone comes back with this very special connection to their place on the planet and their role in making sure that we look after it. So, the Clipper race is this amazing sailing adventure, but actually it's so much more than that, and the repercussions are greater. So I would be very happy to answer any questions anyone has. And if you're interested in following the race, we have a fabulous race viewer on our website. We have skipper and crew blogs being written every day, and if you want to sign up for a daily update email, we can email you with a little update of where the crew are. If you click on the race viewer at the moment, you'll see they're just off the coast of the Philippines, and in a couple of weeks' time you can watch their progress over across the North Pacific. Thank you very much indeed.
Welcome to our Wednesday Yachting Luncheon. It's terrific to listen to the Pro-Am components of the Clipper yacht race, and what a great opportunity for people to race around the world. Now I'm going to ask questions, but if you have a question from the audience, Kathy, will you be handling the mic? Who's handling the mic? Okay. So if you have a question, put your hand up and we'll get your question answered as well. So now, what's the shortest leg? What's the distance in time and length? And what's the longest leg, distance in time and length?
So the shortest leg is leg 2 across the South Atlantic. I apologise, I'm not entirely sure about the mileages, but that's typically about 16, 17 days of sailing.
16 or 17 days. So this is a couple thousand. This is like 2,600 miles or
yeah,
3,000.
I have a few booklets over on the table over there. Feel free to come and grab one. One of those has a map of the race, and then that does give the statistics of each of the individual legs.
And the longest leg? So
in terms of the longest, so some of the legs are, like leg 2, are a single race. Some of them are broken up. So for instance, leg 1 was broken in Portimao. So mileage-wise, the longest I think is about 5,500. It's probably leg 6. This time was due to be from Zhuhai up to Qingdao, and then from Qingdao across. So that's probably about 40 days sailing, with a break in the middle. So it's about a 6-week.
So for a person who wanted to sign up for this, there is the training period. And how long is the training again?
So you have to do 4 weeks of training. You can do those as individual weeks. Quite a lot of overseas crew they'll come and this year we'll come and do levels 1 and 2 back to back, and then they'll come back next year before the race and do levels 3 and 4 back to back.
So 4 weeks of training, and then a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, or 4 weeks or 5 weeks for the shortest and or the either or the longest race.
Yeah, I think leg 2 you would probably need an elapsed time of at least 3 weeks to complete that, because you need to be in port a few days early, and you're expected to be in port for a few days afterwards to help sort of maintain and prepare the boat ready for sea again. The longest one you need to probably allow 6 to 7 weeks end to end.
And the cost of doing the training and the cost of doing, let's say, the shortest leg and the longest leg.
So the costs, these are all in British pounds. You pay separately for training, so that the training is £6,000. That includes the 4 weeks of training and also a package of kit. So we have a partnership with Musto, and so you get your full HPX Musto salopets and smock, and a variety of other bits of kit, which are some are Clipper brand, some are your team kit, sort of sponsor branding. So that's £6,000 for your training and kit, and then
so £6,000 is about $8,000.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
And then each of the legs are priced individually. Some of the legs are £6,500, so that's probably $7,500, $8,000. And the most expensive legs are £7,800.
Okay.
If you want to circumnavigate, so the whole package, training and circumnavigation is £52,500. So that's probably $60,000, something like that.
For all 8 legs.
That's all 8 legs and your
what's the
training.
time commitment for a person who wants to do that then?
So this race started on the 1st of September last year and will end on the 8th of August. So it's pretty much an 11-month odyssey you're taking yourself on.
Not counting the training beforehand.
Training is on top of that, but you don't have to do that in a block. You can spread that out over the year or two beforehand.
Now we have a question from the audience. Kathy Trafton's handling the mic. Jimmy DeWitt, what's your question, buddy?
How old is the oldest person you've had on board?
So this race, we have a 76-year-old.
That's young. The gentleman asking the question just had his 90th birthday party in this room a month ago. Jimmy DeWitt, 90. And you've got by 9 years the Robin Knox-Johnston. He was born in 39. He's about to have a birthday. 17th of March will be Robin's 81st birthday. You got him by 9 years, mate.
I have another question. I've spent a lot of time out in the ocean, seasick. Tell me, how many people want to get off after the first leg?
So, there is no, as you well know, there's no magic cure for seasickness. We probably have 30% of the people sort of suffer to a certain extent. For the vast majority of people, they tend to feel pretty rotten for 24, 48 hours, and then they get their sea legs and get over it. There are a few unfortunate individuals who don't. And can have a pretty tough time of it. But the majority of people will find that out for themselves on their weeks of training. That's the reason we do the training. Yes, it's closer inshore, but actually the Solent in the English Channel has a pretty nasty chop to it. So you can get some pretty uncomfortable sailing going on in the Channel, and I think most people find out pretty quickly whether it's going to be a problem for them or not.
So now those of us who've raced in the ocean, we're always thinking as we're sailing along, okay, but in the dark, in night, what if we hit a container? These boats have they're especially constructed to be safe under such circumstances. Talk a little bit about the crumple zone in the front, the bow of the boat, and other safety features built into these 70s.
So I'm certainly no specialist from this perspective, but I will talk from the knowledge I have. So yes, they have a crash bulkhead. So the forward sort of metre and a half of the yacht has a crash bulkhead. So if you do crash into a container or something, you can take the nose off the yacht and you can sail fine. The yacht is split into 3 sections, excluding the crash bulkhead, and so when the bulkhead doors are closed, you've got 3 watertight sections, so theoretically you can flood any 2 of those and the boats will still float. I'm not sure what else to offer there. I mean, they as I said earlier, these are built much more heavily. These are not Volvo Ocean Race type yachts, which are carbon shells and very, very tight tolerances. These boats are deliberately built heavier. They are designed to go round multiple times. They're currently on their 4th circumnavigation. They came out, each yacht had about 8 to 10 weeks in the shed during last summer, going through a really extensive refit. They have all of their running rigging replaced every race. So they are fabulous yachts, and we actually have another crew alumni in the audience here, Tony, who did the race in 13-14. So if anyone wants a non-official clipper line on what the yachts are like to sail, then he'll certainly give you a crew alumni view.
What do the boats cost originally for the syndicate of the team?
To be honest, I'm not absolutely sure, but I know that we always talk about them being £1,000,000 yachts.
We have a question. Jimmy Lucier has a question. Jimmy.
Yes, actually I have 3, but I'll try. So how do you score the race? Is it leg by leg? Second, are you allowed to use your engine ever? And third is, have there ever been any accidents? Has anyone ever gotten hurt or washed overboard or anything like that?
Okay, yeah, so I'll take the scoring one first. Yeah, the races, each race, so even on leg 1, which was split into 2 races, Each of those individual races is scored, so you have the first yacht in scores 11 points, the last yacht scores 1 point. During the race, there will be a scoring gate, so the race director will always put a scoring gate maybe 50 miles off the rum line to try and tempt the first 3 yachts through get 3 points, 2.1 points, so he'll try and tempt the leaders off the rum line. And there's also an ocean sprint, so there are two lines of longitude or latitude, whichever direction you're going in. About 24 hours of sailing, and the fastest 3 yachts through that get 3 points, 2 points, 1 point. So that's how you score points. Now, the really interesting bit that I think is that if you sustain damage, if you have been a little bit reckless, if you've not looked after your sails or whatever it is, and you have to have excessive maintenance done, you have a sort of a fund of £500 to carry out maintenance. If you consume your £500, you have to buy another pot of £500 with race points. So not only are you being incentivized to sail fast, you are being incentivized to look after your yacht. So the ethos of the Clipper race is not just teaching you to be a sailor, but good seamanship as well from that perspective. So that's how you're scored. So can you use the engine? On the 2 legs, so leg 1 and leg 5 of the current race, so the one going from north to southern hemisphere and back up again. So when you're crossing through the doldrums, we have a doldrums corridor. So we have a rule that during particular marks on the race, you are allowed to use your engine for 60 hours at an average speed of 6 knots. You have to declare that 6 hours in advance, and once you've declared it, you have to use it. So once you have committed to 6 knots for 60 hours, you have to do it. So if you get halfway through that and the wind blows up nicely, you have to keep going. So it's a nice bit of strategy that has to come into that, and that decision making is really tough for the skippers and teams to make sure they make the right choice. And use that at the right time, and you win the race. Use it badly, and you'll be following the others in.
How much in advance of using the engine do you have to ask for it?
6 hours.
We have a question from Vince Castellani. He's a good sailor, and in fact, his kids are 2-time national champions in the snipe class.
Much
Vinny.
better than me.
Vinny.
So, how much did it cost that boat that blew up its code 0 in terms of points?
Yeah, so they will have consumed some race points. So halfway through the following leg, we generally get an announcement from the race committee saying, we've assessed and here are the penalty points for the previous leg. So yeah, they will have conceded points because that spinnaker was beyond use. It was leg 1, so if it was leg 7, they might have gone, look, we'll do the last leg without it. But actually, obviously, they want that spinnaker. So yeah, they would have consumed penalty points to get a new spinnaker.
And there was a second point or third point that was in the last question. What about people getting hurt during the regatta?
Yeah, sure. The race has been going for 24 years. Sadly, we have had 3 fatalities. I won't go into the details on that. You can access them online. That's public knowledge. But for us, we believe as a safety record, that's pretty good. If you compare that to a lot of professional racing, and then if you start comparing it to things like the London Marathon or the Boston Marathon, it's actually not a bad safety record. Of course, we also get injuries, and we get illnesses. On the last race, one of the yachts had to divert on the Southern Ocean leg, had to divert up to Durban because somebody on board had appendicitis. So the ships, the skippers have their ship's captain's medical, so they have a pretty good level of medical training, but we also have a medical partner on the end of the phone, so they're expedition medics, a company called Praxis, and so they will be in touch with the skipper and will diagnose, and the skipper can send pictures and videos, and we have a pretty extensive medical first aid kit on board. In the past, if something is required that isn't in the medical kit, then we had the Australian Air Force fly out in my edition of the race to drop medical packages to one of the yachts because they needed stuff that wasn't in the medical kit. So, this is all part of the experience of doing the race. We've done it. We're in the process of doing it for the 12th time. Every time something goes wrong that hasn't happened before, we create a new set of operating procedures for how to respond to it, and we're learning every time.
What's the watch system?
The watch system is whatever the skipper wants it to be. So most of the yachts pick up the watch system that we use during training, which is 2 6-hour watches during the day and then 3 4-hour watches during the night. So it's sort of a 48-hour pattern to go through the full cycle.
So 6-4, 6-4, 6-4, or
No,
how?
no. So 8 o'clock in the morning, you'll do 6 hours on, 6 hours off, and then during the night you'll do 4 hours on, off, on. But then obviously the next night you'll do 4 hours off, 1 shift on, and then 4 hours off again. So it's a nice watch pattern to do. Some skippers will choose to do different watch patterns. So again, that's not an area that Clipper mandates anything. It's down to the skipper to decide how he's going to run his yacht.
2 watches?
If the skipper wants, I know there are at least 2 yachts on this race doing 3 watches.
And the roles, there's a watch captain on a watch. What else? What are specified roles?
Again, that's down to the skipper. So most yachts, there are certain roles that most yachts will have. So yes, there'll be a watch leader on each watch.
A bow guy, bow person.
So you will have. So we don't really have a bow guy because, like I say, all of these sails weigh so much. When you do a sail change, you've got 3 or 4 people down there, and somebody will take the lead. It just that's how you evolve during your training. Once you're on your yacht, you know who the strong guys are who go down the bow, and people will assume those roles. But certainly there are some roles that will be filled and that people will get specific training for ahead of the race. So someone will be engineer, someone will be bosun, someone will be sail repairer, and those guys get specific training ahead of the race so that when they're on the race they know how to maintain the generator and maintain the water maker. When we get into port, the crews will do a lot of the work, will do a lot of the maintenance. I spent a lot of time behind a sewing machine at the end of leg 1 fixing spinnaker. I learned how to service winches. But for the stuff that is safety related and the stuff at height or stuff that's really complicated, we have a team of maintenance guys who come around with us.
Lisa Overton has a question. Lisa.
Thank you. It's kind of a follow-up on the safety question, but obviously you've changed the race or are changing the race now in response to coronavirus. And I'm wondering in general what the philosophy is in balancing having a fun and challenging and safe race from Clipper's perspective in race management. How much does the race change sort of extemporaneously as the year goes by for issues like geopolitics or weather or an outbreak of an epidemic or something like that?
Yeah, so as I said, leg 5 was due to go into China, was to go into 2 Chinese ports, and then leg 6 was due to have a trip from one Chinese port to another before we then set off across the North Pacific, and those obviously couldn't be done. So with leg 5, when they came into Subic Bay in the Philippines, we were then looking for a couple of short races, and we were looking at South Korea. Obviously that then couldn't happen. We were looking at Japan. That then couldn't happen. So it was a case of the race team were really having to take it day by day and see what was possible. We were very lucky that the Philippines has been pretty virus free, and in the end, particularly before doing leg 6, where you are getting the biggest conditions and you are the furthest from land on the planet. We could not take any risks that anyone getting on the boat had the virus. So, it was felt safest was stay in the Philippines. Maybe it's not quite as exciting from a racing perspective, but actually what they've done with the race is great. The race they're doing at the moment, rather than just going and doing a circular race, they're actually doing a race of 3 ocean sprints. So it's a triangle. Each one is an ocean sprint, and beforehand they have to declare which 2 ocean sprints they want to enter. So again, a little bit of strategy, a little bit of tactics. What's the weather forecast doing? Do I rate myself going upwind or downwind, and then make those decisions. And if you choose right and everybody else has gone for the other ocean sprints, then obviously it makes it a bit easier for you. So ultimately the safety of the crew is paramount, and but we will do whatever we can to make sure we deliver the same amount of sailing and the same sort of excitement of sailing as possible.
Have you had to make those kinds of adjustments for every one of the races in one way or another, or is this a special case?
This is pretty. This is edge case rather than the norm. 2003, we did have to make some adjustments around the SARS virus, but this is fairly extreme in terms of the amount of impact on the race.
Menu, food. Talk about the menu. Just the lightning round. Real short answer for menu. What are people eating?
We cook on board. So, for the first week or so, you carry as much vegetables as you can, the hard vegetables that will last a decent time. It's two-pot cooking. You'll have a big pot of pasta or rice, and then you will do a stew of some sort. Most of the yachts will equip themselves with a small, sort of camping-style chest freezer. So you'll try and keep some meat and some cheese, some protein for later on in the voyage. But a lot of it is, canned fruit and veg, and using a lot of lentils and pulses. So, it can get a bit samey. But, when I was talking about the roles earlier with engineer and bosun, one of the roles is also victualler. A good old-fashioned English naval word. But yeah, so one of the crew will be responsible for deciding what the menu plan is going to be. They'll be given a lot of assistance by Clipper to help prepare for that. But it's down to the crew to decide what to eat and provision the boat accordingly.
Washing clothes.
In port.
Showers.
In port. Merino wool, fantastic.
Talk about crossing the equator.
Crossing the equator, it's fantastic. I remember I was off watch at the time. I was aware of what was going on, and Nikki and I woke up and we sat in the nav station and watched the numbers count down and this line that we crossed. Lots of shouting and cheering on deck. And actually, we didn't have the benign conditions that you often get at the equator, so we were sailing pretty hard. So actually, we waited a day or two until the weather had calmed down to then do our equator crossing ceremonies. But yes, there was only one person on our yacht who had previously crossed the equator, and it wasn't Nikki. So she had to go through the ceremony as well.
How tall is the mast?
Oh, you're asking me some questions here, aren't you? I'm not even going to say in case I get it horribly wrong, and this is being recorded for posterity. But on the website there's information about the fleet, and there's a nice graphic of the yacht. It tell you draft and height and weight and things like that. So get it from the source rather than from me having a bit of a guess.
So I didn't see spinnaker poles. Are they asymmetric kites?
They're asymmetric kites, yeah.
All asymmetric, yeah. So you don't have the problem of spinnaker poles. You don't have to worry about the dangers.
Absolutely. So the 68s, the fleet beforehand had spinnaker poles. I've sailed with spinnaker poles in the past and know how challenging they can be. But when they're that size, it's a real challenge. But yeah, they're asymmetric. You have 3 different sizes of spinnaker. And that can be pretty challenging in itself, getting that down when, if you've kept it up just a little bit too long and the weather's starting to get a bit stronger, that can be quite a challenge getting a spinnaker down that size.
Talk about being snapped into a jackline. How often, etc.
So once the true wind speed goes above 15 knots, or when it's dark, or if you're in the middle of an amount of a board, so there are certain times when you have to clip on, but basically as soon as the wind gets even slightly interesting, you have to clip on before you leave the second step down of the companionway. So you are clipped on. Our tethers are double-ended, so you are never unclipped at any moment.
Jimmy, do it.
If something should happen to your electricity, is one of the professionals, do they know celestial navigation?
Yeah, the skipper will have their, they are ocean yachtmaster and the mates as well. So yeah, we carry sextants and the almanac. So we have all the ability on board, and the knowledge should be there as well. My guess is they'll probably have to do a rapid bit of brushing up if it came to it. But yeah, the potential does exist.
How do you get electricity on the boat? How's it generated?
So there is so as well as the engine, there's a separate generator as well. So that generator is run generally sort of 4 or 5 hours a day. We run the generator whilst we're running the water maker. So the water maker is obviously the more important element, and the generator is running whilst that's going. But whilst the generator is running, the crew are allowed to charge their devices. So if they have an iPad or a phone. The crew do have the opportunity to sign up for a crew email account. So it's a very basic text-only email account, but they do, the skipper will turn on the sat phone every so often to get internet access, and you can ping messages out to people. And maybe 50 or 60% of the crew do that, but I think quite a few of the crew actually like the fact that they're in the middle of the ocean and they can't get their email. So I think that's not a bad way to go.
And so Bay Area sailor Harmon Schrag, hey Harmon, is racing right now. Are there other Bay Area sailors that you know of on one of the boats right now?
I'm not sure about right now, but certainly I was at South Beach Yacht Club on Monday, and there were two guys who had just come off. One had done leg 4, one had done leg 5. And there were about 8 or 10 alumni crew there as well. So, and actually they were saying that it's about time we got the alumni together again. So I think we're going to start making a bit more of an effort to see if we can get the Californian Clipper alumni sort of all on a Facebook group or a WhatsApp group together, and maybe see if we can start getting them together once in a while.
Walter Crump has a question. Walter.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Who are the sail makers? I'm an old sail maker.
Keep the mic close.
Sail makers for the sails, and if I don't know, or where are they from?
So they're Hyde Sails. So it's a British company, but the sails are actually made in the Philippines in their factory out there.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a sewing machine on the boat for sail repair?
There is. There's a sewing machine on the boat with all the kit you need. So yes, if you rip a sail, it's down to you as a team to fix it. And that with the spinnakers, it amazes me what they can do. But you've got this spinnaker the size of a doubles tennis court, and you're sitting at a sewing machine in a bit of the boat about the size of your bathroom, trying to patch this jigsaw together, maybe sewing up a sort of a 20 or 30 foot rip in the sail. So it's quite remarkable what they managed to do. But yeah, there's sewing machine and all the kit on board to keep your sails in trim.
What's the most wind breeze you've seen when you've been on the boat?
So on the North Pacific, we had a storm come through. We clocked 100 knot winds, had 15 meter seas. We had
15 meter, 45 foot seas.
About 45 foot, yeah. We had the boom lashed down on the deck. The wind was coming in from the rear quarter. On board, whenever you're helming, you always have somebody next to the helm as spotter, just to just act as a standby. When we were in those conditions, we had a third spotter looking backwards, calling the waves the wave patterns as they came in, to make sure that the helm sort of positioned themselves right for that. But yeah, that was pretty exciting. We had the smallest Yankee up, and every so often the hanks would go on that, so we'd have to drop it and replace the hanks. And there was one point where under bare poles we were still doing 15 knots. So yeah, we were going quite nicely.
So each watch has got 8 or 9 folks on a watch?
Correct.
And so in the ocean racing, when I race in the ocean, we actually have a rotation. When you come on watch, you'll go from the handles to different rolls, trimming, and then ultimately driving. Do you have a system like that on the boat? Is that up to each skipper, I'm assuming, but is there generally a system like that in a watch?
It is up to each skipper, but the premise of the Clipper race is involvement. People are signing up to have a go at stuff, so there's not the expectation that someone's going to come on board and go, I'm just going to helm. No, you're not just going to helm. You're going to helm, you're going to trim, you're going to be on the grinder, you're going to go down below and do the bilges and the cooking and clean the heads. So basically every day you pick up a role. Your watch number is on a list. And you might be responsible for the bilges that day, or might be responsible for the log, or doing a deck walk to check the kit. But yeah, absolutely, you are expected to have a go at everything. There will be certain conditions, like the big conditions in the North Pacific, where Nicky the skipper said, right, I just want my best 3 or 4 helms to do it, because the conditions are not right for someone who's not as confident. And similarly, if an individual says, I don't really feel comfortable going forward of the mast in a big sea, that's fine, because there are plenty of other people on the boat who say, I want to go forward of the mast in a big sea. So if people don't want to do stuff, they're not going to get forced to do it, unless it's an emergency. But if they want to have a go, they will be invited to do so.
So it's terrific that in our audience today we actually have a sailor who sailed for a leg in the Clipper race. Tony, give us a couple of thoughts on the experience that you had sailing on the boat.
So I originally signed up to do the Southern Ocean leg, which is something I've sailed the Atlantic, I've sailed the Pacific. Southern Ocean is not something you get to do so often. Thinking about it, I thought my thinking went along the lines of, why am I putting my life at risk in the Southern Ocean without knowing who I'm sailing with? As a result of that, I signed up to do the South Pacific also, which was very much worthwhile, really worthwhile. with respect to what Will was talking about, it really is up to the watch to decide. I mean, I was thinking about the Southern Ocean. One night, there was so much moisture in the air, you couldn't see from the helm to the companionway. And I ended up helming 4 hours because nobody else was willing to step up to the plate. And, you know, you didn't have instruments. You were just sailing by the feel of the amount of heel and the wind on your ear. Just the old-fashioned way of doing it. Right?
Thank you, Tony. So ship-to-shore communications by the average person on the crew? Talk about that.
Sorry, you're talking as in sort of just personal communication?
How often do they do email? Can they do email? Can they make phone calls?
Yeah, so like I say, you can sign up for a crew email account, which is a very basic email account in terms of it's text only. You know, it's a limited amount of data. So, you know, and that is only, you know, the internet is only turned on for, you know, half an hour or so, you know, each end of the day. So you download an app onto your smartphone, you type your emails and store them, and then every so often you've got the opportunity, you hit send and receive, and you know, it'll pick up any new emails and send outgoing ones. So that's what most people do. Certainly for me, I used it primarily as sort of outgoing communication. I basically was emailing back to my daughter, and my daughter was sort of posting on Facebook for me, and that was how the sort of communication was going. You can also sign up to use the sat phone as well. So you get a PIN number for that. You know, you just need to bear in mind that there's not a nice little phone box on the boat. You know, you might be having your romantic phone call back home, and you've got the skipper next to you, you know, putting the position in, and you've got someone writing the log on the other side, and somebody else looking for something. You know, so you've got to accept that it's not going to be not going to be much privacy, but the possibility exists if you need to have a chat with someone back home.
Will Stokely of the Clipper Yacht Race, it's been wonderful that you shared these stories with us today. Thank you so much. Seems like a very, very fun activity for people to sign up. Those who want to sign up to participate in the Clipper Yacht Race, do what?
So on our website, cliparoundtheworld.com, there are lots of opportunities to hit the Apply Now button. You know, first step is sign up to have a brochure. You can get a digital brochure download, and that gives you lots of information. We run webinars every couple of weeks, so if you want to listen to a couple of us who have done the race chatting about a few more details and the practicalities of taking part as crew, that's a nice way to do it. And if you're ready to get stuck in, then there's the Apply Now button. So put your details in there, and we will get in touch with you and start to organise your interview.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for joining the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon. And with that, the meeting's adjourned.